The roar of the crowd at the World Cup final in New Madrid Stadium peaked as Martinez lined up the potential game-winning shot. Billions watched worldwide, their collective breath held in anticipation. That's when the sky crystallized. There was no other way to describe it. The afternoon sun fractured into 1,000 prismatic shards as massive crystalline vessels materialized above every major city on Earth. The soccer ball rolled forgotten across the field as 90,000 fans fell silent, their phones raised toward the otherworldly spectacle. Dr. Emily Blackwood was in her lab at the Global Xenobiology Institute when the first transmission came. The aliens called themselves the Scatheri, their language a series of melodic chimes that Earth's AI translators took hours to decode. Their message was simple. They were researchers, peaceful explorers who had watched humanity's progress from afar. Now they wished to make contact, offering medical breakthroughs beyond human imagination in exchange for studying our young. There's something wrong with their biorhythms, Emily insisted 3 days later, standing before the Global Defense Council. She gestured to the holographic readings floating above the conference table. Look at these patterns. Their neural signatures show micro-fluctuations inconsistent with their stated physiology. General Richards leaned forward, his weathered face illuminated by the data streams. Dr. Blackwood, they've already provided cures for 3 types of cancer. The public is overwhelmingly in favor of cooperation. Unless you have concrete evidence. It's in the data. She fought to keep her voice steady. These beings, they're not what they claim to be. We need more time to study. The vote has been cast. Council President Chen interrupted. Supervised research centers will be established in 50 major cities. Participation will be voluntary, with full parental consent and oversight. Emily's objections were noted and filed away. Within days, the research centers opened their crystalline doors. The Scatheri moved with fluid grace among the children, their translucent bodies refracting light like living prisms. Parents watched through observation windows as their children played with floating geometric puzzles and underwent what appeared to be harmless scans. The first child collapsed 18 days after the programs began. Little Marcus Williams had been laughing at one of the Scatheri's light shows when he suddenly went silent. His mother's scream brought Emily running to the Chicago facility. By the time she arrived, 12 more children had fallen into similar states across 3 continents. Their neural patterns are completely altered, Emily reported to the emergency council session. The dark circles under her eyes testify to her sleepless nights analyzing the data. It's as if something is feeding on their neural activity, consuming it. The Scatheri representatives chimed their denial, their crystalline forms pulsing with soothing patterns. Their explanations were perfect, rehearsed. A previously unknown human genetic condition, they claimed. They were working on a solution. But Emily saw the truth in the way they moved among the comatose children. Their bodies glowed brighter near each victim, like crystal catching sunlight. When they thought no one was watching, their movements became predatory, eager. By the end of the week, thousands of children lay unresponsive in hospitals worldwide. The Scatheri's masks finally cracked when Emily managed to capture one of their feeding sessions on a quantum spectrum camera. The footage showed tendrils of pure neural energy flowing from the children into the aliens' crystalline forms. The Scatheri dropped their pretense. Their next transmission contained no melodic chimes, only harsh, sharp notes that made listeners' teeth ache. They were harvesters, they revealed, ancient beings who fed on the neural energy of developing sentient minds. Human children, with their unique capacity for imagination and growth, were the most potent food source they'd discovered in millennia. As Emily stared at her computer screen, processing this horror, an alert flashed. Her daughter's school was next on the Scatheri's research schedule. She grabbed her keys, already running, knowing in her bones that humanity's darkest hour was just beginning. But so was its awakening. Emily Blackwood hadn't left Madison's hospital room in 3 days. The rhythmic beep of monitors provided a maddening soundtrack as she watched her 12-year-old daughter's chest rise and fall, her once vibrant green eyes now closed unseeing. Like hundreds of other children in St. Michael's Hospital alone, Madison lay trapped in a coma that defied all medical explanation. Her neural activity is strange, Dr. Patterson muttered, frowning at his tablet. It's not declining like the others. If anything, it's intensifying, but in patterns I've never seen before. Emily brushed a strand of Madison's copper hair from her forehead. Show me. The neural mapping displayed a complex dance of synaptic activity, pulsing in an oddly familiar rhythm. Emily had seen something similar recently, but couldn't place it. She pulled up readings from other hospitals on her quantum slate, and her coffee cup slipped from suddenly numb fingers. My God, she whispered. They're synchronized. Every child, from New York to Tokyo, displayed identical brainwave patterns, pulsing in perfect harmony like a planet-wide neural network. As she dug deeper into the data, her hands began to shake. The synchronization had started the moment the Scatheri had dropped their peaceful facade. A crystalline form glided past the room's window, and something primal stirred in Emily's chest. The Scatheri researcher entered, its faceted body refracting harsh fluorescent light. We require another sampling, it chimed, reaching for Madison. Don't you dare touch her. Emily's voice emerged as a growl she barely recognized. The lights flickered. Your interference is unnecessary. The alien's translated voice held no emotion. The process cannot be reversed. Their neural energy sustains us. Rage erupted in Emily's chest, a molten thing that consumed all rational thought. The hospital room's equipment exploded in a shower of sparks. The Scatheri researcher staggered back, its crystalline form vibrating with what might have been fear. Emily felt power surge through her body, electric and ancient. Through the window's reflection, she caught a glimpse of her eyes glowing with the same bioluminescence as their alien tormentors. The Scatheri fled, its chimes discordant with alarm. Dr. Blackwood. Patterson's voice shook. The readings. Every parent in the building is showing similar neural spikes. And not just here. Reports are coming in worldwide. Emily's quantum slate chimed with urgent messages. A father in Detroit had generated a force field when a Scatheri tried to collect his son. A mother in Brisbane had shattered every window in her child's hospital ward with a scream. The incidents multiplied by the hour. But it was the children's synchronization that haunted her. Emily pulled up cellular scans, and there it was. Genetic markers activating in perfect sequence across the global population. Humanity's DNA was changing, responding to a threat to its youngest members. Mom. Emily spun around. Madison's eyes were still closed, but her lips moved slightly. Madison, baby, can you hear me? Everyone's connected, Madison whispered. We can feel them all. The other children, the parents, everyone. Something's waking up, Mom. Something old. A surge of protective instinct flooded Emily's consciousness, and with it came understanding. The Scatheri hadn't just attacked their children. They had triggered an evolutionary failsafe buried deep in human DNA. A mechanism designed to activate only in response to an extinction-level threat to human offspring. Her slate buzzed again. Similar reports poured in from around the globe. Parents manifesting abilities that defied physics, all triggered by threats to their children. Through her newly awakened senses, Emily felt the larger pattern forming, a neural network of shared consciousness, growing stronger by the minute. Madison's fingers twitched in her hand. They don't understand what they've done, Mom. They thought we were weak because we care so much about our children. A small smile curved her lips. They're about to learn why that was a mistake. Outside, crystal ships glinted in the sunlight, their occupants unaware that they had just awakened something far more ancient and powerful than themselves. Humanity's response to their greatest fear, the threat to their young, was about to demonstrate why Earth's species had survived every extinction event in its history. The real question was, would the galaxy survive what the Scatheri had unleashed? The changes spread like wildfire. Emily watched the global feed in her makeshift command center at St. Michael's Hospital, each new incident adding to the growing pattern. In Moscow, kindergarten teacher Natasha Petrova had formed telepathic links with all 23 of her students, their shared consciousness acting as a barrier against Scytheri harvesting attempts. A father in Cape Town levitated an entire alien collection vessel away from his daughter's school. The genetic activation is accelerating, Emily explained to the hastily assembled Global Defense Council, her voice carrying over the holographic feed. What we're seeing isn't random mutation, it's a coordinated evolutionary response. You're saying we had this potential all along. General Richards leaned forward, his hologram flickering with interference from the crystal ships hovering above every major city. Think about it. Emily projected the genetic data she'd compiled. Throughout Earth's history, humans weren't the strongest, fastest, or most numerous species, but we survived every extinction event, every catastrophe. We protected our young against impossible odds. What if that wasn't just determination? The data streams showed cascading genetic activations, spreading outward from parent-child pairs like ripples in a pond. The changes weren't just physical, they were restructuring human consciousness itself. A commotion outside drew Emily to the window. 3 Scytheri harvesters approached the hospital's pediatric ward, their crystalline forms pulsing with hungry light. They hadn't fed since the changes began, and their desperation was showing. James Henderson, a local music teacher visiting his nephew, stepped into their path. The violin in his hands seemed incongruous until he drew the bow across the strings. The note that emerged wasn't music, it was pure force, shattering one of the Scytheri into glittering shards. Emily felt the resonance through the new awareness they all shared. Henderson hadn't just discovered this ability. He'd somehow known exactly which frequency would disrupt the alien's crystalline structure. The knowledge had come through the growing neural network connecting awakened humans. Her slate buzzed with an urgent message from Madison. "Mom." Her daughter's voice was stronger now, though her body remained in its hospital bed. "I can see how it works. The Scytheri, they feed on neural energy because they lost their own ability to generate it. They're parasites who forgot how to evolve." Emily shared Madison's insight through the network. Across the globe, humans began targeting the harvesters' fundamental weakness, their static, unchanging nature. The Scytheri had traded adaptability for near immortality, becoming living crystals that could only sustain themselves by consuming the neural energy of developing minds. They chose the wrong species to harvest. A mother in Sydney shared through the network, as she facing down a collector ship, her newfound abilities turning the air itself into a weapon. We never stopped evolving. The Scytheri's response was swift and brutal. Crystal ships descended on military installations worldwide, their weapons capable of vaporizing entire city blocks. But each attack only accelerated the awakening. Emily felt the change in her own cells, a transformation driven by the most primal force in nature, the need to protect one's young. Her consciousness expanded, connecting with others, like her, sharing knowledge, power, and purpose. Your species will be harvested. The Scytheri's global transmission held no trace of their earlier deception. We have consumed countless civilizations. Your evolutionary response, while impressive, cannot match our technological superiority. Emily watched as Madison's brainwave pattern suddenly shifted, becoming a template that spread through the network. Other comatose children followed, their combined neural pattern creating something entirely new. "You don't understand what you've done," Emily transmitted back, her voice joined by millions. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our adaptability. It's what we're willing to become to protect our children." Above the hospital, the crystal ships began to pulse with alarmed light as their sensors detected the growing power below. They had harvested countless species, but they had never encountered one that could transform itself at the genetic level in response to a threat to its offspring. They were about to learn why on Earth nothing was more dangerous than a parent protecting their child. The real battle was about to begin. North Portland Elementary looked abandoned from the outside, its playground eerily silent in the morning light. Inside, 32 children lay in their makeshift ward, their minds linked in that mysterious synchronized coma. James Henderson sat between the rows of small beds, his violin resting in his lap. The children's parents huddled nearby, their newly awakened abilities humming like static electricity in the air. They'd turned the school into a fortress after the hospital evacuations, protecting their young from further harvesting attempts. "They're coming," a mother named Sarah whispered, her enhanced senses detecting the approaching Sktheri vessels. At least 3 harvesters. Henderson stood, positioning himself near the window. He'd been a simple music teacher 3 days ago, showing 3rd graders how to play hot cross buns. Now he could feel the crystalline resonance of the approaching aliens, their hunger a discordant note in the universe's symphony. The first vessel appeared above the empty playground, its faceted surface catching the morning sun. 2 more materialized beside it, their combined energy signatures suggesting they were among the Sktheri's elite harvesters. "Your resistance is futile." Their transmission chimed through the school's speakers. "Surrender the young ones. We offer a painless completion of the harvest." Henderson raised his violin, remembering every child who'd sat in his music class, their faces bright with joy as they created their first notes. Through the growing neural network, he felt Dr. Blackwood and countless others watching, lending their strength and knowledge. "You should have learned about Earth's music," he said softly, drawing his bow across the strings. The note that emerged wasn't bound by physical laws. It carried the grief of parents watching their children suffer, the rage of protectors pushed too far, and something deeper, the accumulated weight of every species the Sktheri had ever harvested. The lead vessel's crystalline structure began to vibrate. Henderson played on, his music becoming a weapon forged from humanity's collective pain and determination. The other parents joined in, their abilities amplifying the assault. Sarah's electrokinetic power harmonized with his notes, while another father's newfound gravity manipulation forced the ships lower. The first vessel shattered with a sound like breaking dreams, its fragments raining down on the empty playground. The other 2 tried to retreat, but Henderson's melody had become a symphony of retribution. Through the network, other awakened humans caught the resonance, learning to detect the precise frequency it could shatter the harvester's crystalline forms. "How?" the remaining Sktheri transmitted, their usual melodic tones fractured with fear. "You were mere food stock, primitive beings whose neural energy served only to sustain us," a child's voice answered. Madison Blackwood, speaking through the network from her hospital bed across town. "You thought our love for our children was weakness. You never understood that it was the source of our strength." The second vessel exploded as a teacher in Brisbane replicated Henderson's frequency. The third barely managed to escape, leaving behind a trail of crystalline shards that glittered like tears in the morning light. Through the network, Henderson felt similar battles unfolding worldwide. In Moscow, Natasha Petrova's telepathic link with her students had grown strong enough to create a psychic barrier that repelled harvesters. Parents in Rio de Janeiro had developed the ability to generate electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the Sktheri's neural feeding mechanism. "Mr. Henderson," a small voice drew his attention. Tommy Chen, one of his 3rd grade students, had opened his eyes for the first time in days. "I can still hear the music." One by one, the children in the makeshift ward began to stir. Their shared consciousness had protected them during the coma, and now they were returning with abilities of their own. Tommy's fingers moved in the air, conducting an invisible orchestra that made the very molecules around them dance. Dr. Blackwood's voice echoed through the network. "The children aren't just recovering. They're evolving beyond what this Sktheri could possibly harvest. Each attack makes us stronger, more unified." Henderson looked out at the crystal fragments glittering on the playground, each one catching the light like a promise. The Sktheri had wanted Earth's children for their neural energy. Instead, they'd awakened something that had slumbered in human DNA since the first parent stood guard over a sleeping child. The harvesters were about to learn why Earth's lullabies had always carried a warning. The Global Defense Council's underground bunker hummed with newfound energy as Emily Blackwood watched the neural network expand across the holographic globe. Each awakened human appeared as a point of light, their connections forming a brilliant lattice that grew more complex by the minute. It's not just abilities they're sharing, she explained to General Richards, who stared transfixed at the display. Knowledge, memories, skills, they're all flowing through the network. As if to prove her point, a construction worker in Dubai suddenly accessed combat training from 1,000 military minds, using the knowledge to disable a Sktheri harvester with terrifying precision. In Stockholm, a kindergarten teacher instantaneously learned advanced quantum physics, using her new understanding to create localized time distortions that trapped crystal ships in temporal bubbles. We're becoming something new. Madison's voice came through the neural link. She was sitting up in her hospital bed now, her eyes glowing with the same inner light that all the recovered children shared. But we're not losing ourselves, Mom. We're becoming more of who we are. That was the miracle of it. Unlike the Sktheri's rigid crystalline hive mind, humanity's neural network enhanced individual uniqueness. Each person's contributions made the whole stronger, while their distinct personalities remained intact. A massive crystal ship appeared over Manhattan, its surface crackling with energy. Your aberration must end, the Sktheri Supreme Harvester transmitted. Your species was meant for consumption, not ascension. Emily felt the network pulse in response. A librarian in Queens accessed the combined tactical knowledge of Earth's military leaders. A chef in Brooklyn channeled the collective understanding of molecular physics. A taxi driver tapped into centuries of accumulated human knowledge about the nature of consciousness itself. The ship fired its main weapon, a beam designed to sever neural connections. But humanity's shared consciousness had evolved beyond such crude attacks. Parents around the city instinctively formed a protective barrier, their combined will turning the air itself into a shield. Don't you understand yet? Emily transmitted back. Every attack makes us stronger. Every child you threatened awakens more of our potential. You didn't find a food source. You found your replacement. Through the network, she felt Madison connecting with other children worldwide. The young ones had formed their own layer of consciousness within the greater network, their minds unfettered by adult preconceptions about reality's limits. The children are the key, Madison shared through their link. We can see the patterns that the adults miss. The Sktheri, they're not just feeding on neural energy. They're trying to steal back what they lost. Emily saw it then, through her daughter's enhanced perception. The Sktheri had once been like humanity, capable of growth and change. But they crystallized themselves into immortal forms, losing the ability to evolve. They fed on developing minds because they desperately sought to recapture what they'd sacrificed. The Manhattan ship launched harvesters, but humanity's network had grown too strong. A hot dog vendor accessed the knowledge of quantum mechanics and opened a micro-singularity. A ballet dancer borrowed the combined understanding of electromagnetic forces to disrupt the crystal's molecular structure. A preschool teacher channeled humanity's accumulated knowledge of sonic resonance to shatter a dozen harvesters with a whispered lullaby. This is impossible. The Supreme Harvester transmitted, its crystalline form vibrating with something like fear. Your species is barely mature. You were meant to be cattle. Emily felt Madison's smile through the network. That's why it'll never win, her daughter responded, her consciousness backed by millions of awakened minds. We're not finished growing. We never are. The network surged, each human consciousness contributing its unique perspective to the whole. They were becoming something unprecedented, a species that could share everything they were while remaining uniquely themselves, bound together not by forced unity, but by the one force the Sktheri could never understand: love. Above Manhattan, the Supreme Harvester's crystal ship began to crack, its perfect structure unable to withstand contact with humanity's chaotic, beautiful evolution. The age of the harvesters was ending. The age of humanity's awakening had begun. And through it all, the children dreamed of what they would become next. The St. Michael's Hospital Command Center erupted in alarms as the Scatheri launched their desperate counterstrike. Crystal ships appeared in unprecedented numbers, their combined energy signatures turning the morning sky into a kaleidoscope of deadly light. "They're targeting the children first," Emily transmitted through the network. "All awakened parents, coordinate with your local defense clusters." The response was immediate and devastating. In Tokyo, a group of sushi chefs channeled their shared consciousness into a quantum barrier that turned a harvester beam back on itself, crystallizing the attacking ship. Parents in Cairo merged their abilities to create a temporal storm that aged 3 vessels into dust. But the Scatheri had brought their full force. For every ship destroyed, 2 more appeared, their attacks growing more vicious as desperation set in. "Their neural pattern is changing," Madison's voice cut through the chaos. She sat upright in her hospital bed, her eyes blazing with inner light. "They're burning through their stored energy. Without a successful harvest, they'll begin to destabilize." Emily accessed the collected scientific knowledge flowing through the network, understanding blooming in her mind. The Scatheri weren't just fighting for food. They were fighting for survival. Their crystalline forms required constant neural energy to maintain cohesion. A massive harvester burst through the clouds above the hospital, its faceted surface crackling with accumulated power. "You will feed us," it transmitted, the translation filled with static. "Or we will end every child on this world." The beam it fired wasn't designed to harvest. It was pure destruction. Emily felt the network surge as every parent in the hospital reached out with their abilities, trying to shield the children's ward. But the attack was too powerful, too concentrated. Then Madison stood up. The network exploded with energy as every comatose child awakened simultaneously. Their shared consciousness, which had been evolving during their forced sleep, emerged as something entirely new. Madison raised her hands, and Emily felt her daughter's consciousness expand to encompass every awakened human on Earth. The harvester beam struck a barrier of pure thought, the children's combined while turning it into harmless light. "Now, Mom," Madison whispered, "everyone together." Emily understood. She opened herself fully to the network, feeling millions of others do the same. Parents, teachers, caregivers, everyone who had awakened in defense of the young ones added their strength to the children's unified consciousness. The resulting surge of power was beyond anything in human history. Every person contributed their unique essence: love, rage, hope, determination, creating something that transcended mere neural energy. This was evolution itself, the force that had driven life from single cells to sentience, compressed into a single moment of shared will. The massive harvester began to vibrate, its crystalline structure unable to process the raw power being channeled through Madison and the other children. Cracks appeared in its perfect surface, spreading like lightning across its form. "What is this?" the Scatheri transmitted, their collective voice fracturing. "What have you become?" "We've become what you forgot to be," Madison responded, her voice carrying the weight of millions. "Life isn't about preservation. It's about change, about becoming more than you are, so your children can become more than you could imagine." The harvester exploded in a cascade of crystal shards, each fragment reflecting the dawn of humanity's new age. Around the world, other ships began to fall, shattered by the combined will of a species that had found its hidden strength. Through the network, Emily felt the children's consciousness continue to evolve, already becoming something beyond what the adults could fully comprehend. The Scatheri had meant to feed on their neural energy, but had instead triggered an evolutionary response that would reshape the galaxy. "The other ships are retreating," General Richards reported through the network. "We're detecting massive crystalline destabilization in their fleet." Emily hugged Madison, feeling her daughter's consciousness shine with the combined light of humanity's awakened potential. The Scatheri had wanted to consume Earth's children. Instead, they had become the catalyst for humanity's next great leap forward. But as the remaining crystal ships fled Earth's orbit, Emily felt a darker truth through the network. This wasn't over. Somewhere out there, other young ones still waited to be saved. The real mission was just beginning. Through humanity's neural network, Emily felt the Scatheri fleet's retreat like a crystalline wake across the cosmos. But something else echoed through that vast darkness. Distant cries of pain, fragments of consciousness scattered across thousands of worlds. They weren't just harvesting us, Madison said, her small hand gripping Emily's as they stood in the hospital's observatory. The night sky seemed different now, each star a potential beacon of suffering. They've been doing this for millennia. So many children, so many species. The neural network hummed with shared purpose as humanity processed this revelation. Through their enhanced perception, they could detect the quantum echoes of the Scatheri's previous harvests. Civilizations broken, young minds drained, entire species reduced to hollow shells of their potential. "Show them," Madison whispered, her consciousness merging with the other awakened children. "Show them what we've become." Emily felt the network surge as humanity prepared to broadcast its first unified message to the galaxy. The children led the effort, their evolved consciousness serving as a bridge across the vast distances of space. Every awakened human contributed, their combined will turning Earth's magnetic field into an amplifier for their transmission. The message burst forth in waves of pure thought, carrying with it the seeds of awakening. We were not the apex predators of our world. We were its guardians. You harmed those we protect. Now face the consequences. To those still suffering under the harvester's grip, watch, learn, and rise. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, dormant genes began to activate on 1,000 worlds. Species that had been harvested for generations suddenly felt the stirring of long-buried potential, their own protective instincts awakening in response to humanity's call. Through the network, they witnessed it all. A crystalline citadel around a distant star shattered as its captive species awakened. A harvest ship over a purple gas giant exploded when its intended victims suddenly manifested defensive abilities. Entire systems blazed with newfound consciousness as humanity's message triggered evolutionary responses in species the Scatheri had thought broken beyond repair. We did more than defeat them, Emily realized, accessing the collected knowledge flowing through the network. We just sparked a galaxy-wide revolution. The Scatheri's desperate final transmission cut through the celebrations. You don't understand what you've done. The order we maintained was built on the suffering of children. Madison interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of millions. That order ends today. Through their enhanced senses, they watched the Scatheri Empire crumble. Crystal ships fell from the skies of 100 worlds as their power sources failed, their stored neural energy dissipating into space. The harvester's perfectly ordered society collapsed in the face of something they couldn't consume or control. Evolution itself. But with victory came responsibility. Emily felt it in the network's shifting currents, the overwhelming urge to help those the Scatheri had victimized. Humanity had not only awakened its own potential, but had become a catalyst for other species to reclaim their stolen heritage. We need to help them, Madison said, her consciousness already reaching out to connect with awakening minds across the galaxy. Some don't understand what's happening to them. They're scared, like we were at first. Through the network, Emily saw the truth of it. Earth would no longer be just another world among the stars. They had become something new. Teachers, healers, guardians for a galaxy of awakening species. The very force that had helped them defeat the Scatheri, the instinct to protect the young, would now drive them to help others recover from centuries of harvest. Above them, the night sky filled with aurora-like patterns as humanity's message continued to ripple outward. Each flash of light represented another species beginning their own journey of awakening, their dormant genes responding to the call of shared consciousness. The Scatheri thought they were harvesting food, Emily transmitted through the network. Instead, they planted seeds. And in the vast darkness between the stars, those seeds were beginning to grow. The final battle was over. The real challenge, helping the galaxy of awakened species learn to use their newfound powers, was just beginning. 3 months after the Scathuri's defeat, the first interstellar expedition prepared to leave Earth's orbit. The ship, named Guardian, wasn't built of metal and circuits, but of crystalline matrices grown from recovered Scathuri fragments, infused with humanity's awakened consciousness. Emily stood in the launch control center, watching through both physical eyes and the neural network as Madison helped calibrate the ship's consciousness-driven systems. At 13, her daughter had become one of the foremost experts in integrating human thought with crystalline technology. "It's beautiful," Madison said, her mind touching the ship's neural matrix. "It remembers being part of the harvesters, but it's learning to grow, to change. Like we did." The network hummed with activity as the first crew prepared for departure. They weren't chosen for their traditional spacefaring skills, but for their ability to connect with and teach other awakening species. James Henderson would use his music to help translate emotions across species barriers. Natasha Petrova's gift for forming telepathic bonds would help traumatized civilizations rebuild their neural connections. "We're receiving another distress call," General Richards announced, projecting the signal through the network. "A species in the Carina Nebula. They've awakened but can't control their new abilities. Their children are. Set course for Carina," Emily commanded, feeling the crew's immediate response. "Madison, are you sure about this?" Her daughter smiled, her consciousness already reaching toward the stars. "They need us, Mom. All the children out there need us." Through the network, they monitored the ongoing transformation of the galaxy. Some species developed abilities unlike anything humanity had manifested: control over gravity, manipulation of quantum states, even the ability to communicate with stars. Each awakening was unique, shaped by the species' own evolutionary history and protective instincts. The Scathuri themselves had gone silent, retreating to their core worlds as their former victims rose up. But humanity's final gift to them was taking root: the ability to change, to grow, to become something more than living crystals feeding on the neural energy of others. "Guardian Actual, you are cleared for departure," Emily transmitted, feeling the ship's consciousness merge with its crew's. "Remember the protocol for first contact with awakening species. Trust the children first," Madison recited, her voice carrying through the network. "They're the ones who can see past the old barriers. The adults will follow." The ship rose on pillars of thought, its crystalline surface refracting sunlight, like hope made solid. As it accelerated toward the stars, Emily felt the network expand with it. Humanity's consciousness reaching out to touch minds across impossible distances. Through their enhanced perception, they watched as the galaxy transformed. The rigid hierarchies of the Scathuri era gave way to a new order based on growth, change, and the protection of the young. Species that had been enemies under harvester rule discovered they could share consciousness across the barriers of biology and physics. "The children of every species are awakening faster now," Madison reported through the link. "It's like they were waiting for this moment. Every child born carries the new potential." Emily accessed the collected knowledge flowing through the network, seeing the pattern emerge. The Scathuri's greatest fear had come true. The galaxy was becoming something they couldn't control or predict. Life itself was evolving beyond the crystalline stasis they had tried to impose. As Guardian disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Emily felt Madison's consciousness expand to encompass the ship's crew, the awakening species in the Carina Nebula, and all the vast potential that lay between the stars. "We were never meant to be the strongest or the most advanced," Emily transmitted to the waiting galaxy. "We were meant to be the ones who showed others how to grow, how to change, how to protect their young, and through them, their future." The network pulsed with agreement as humanity embraced its new role, not conquerors or saviors, but guardians of evolution itself. They would ensure that no species would ever again be trapped in stasis, that every child born would have the chance to become something more than their parents could imagine. The age of the harvesters was over. The age of infinite potential had begun.